Today I'm going to be replacing the gearbox, the evaporator, and the auger on this Manitowoc RNP ice machine. The P stands for propane. Hopefully everything turns out right. Let's get into it. Just opened up this machine. Like I said, I took off all the panels, and I wasn't the one that diagnosed this. What I was told was that I think this had snapped off of something and it wasn't supposed to, or this thing broke off of something. Yeah, that looks pretty rough. I think it's supposed to be, not sure exactly how it goes, but that's not supposed to be broke off like that. This is the auger, and if you look at the edge of that, and I can show you the new one when I go to install it, but the new one is supposed to be not chewed up on the end. And I believe that this goes here, and that was snapped off, and this is all chewed up as well. So what I'm going to start by doing is I'm going to start by just taking all of this stuff out. I'm replacing the gear motor, the gearbox, which is one assembly, and I'm replacing the evaporator, which means I have to cut these copper lines and get the refrigerant out of the system. For R290, the way to recover the refrigerant is actually not to recover it. You just cut the line and let it vent out to the atmosphere, and then make very, very sure that it's all out of the system before you start thinking about welding. Otherwise, you might end up with a kaboom type situation. I'm also gonna make sure I don't have any water in here, which I probably do, and then go forward from there. Here's where we're at now. These are my new parts that I'm gonna be putting in. Luckily, the evaporator came as the complete assembly with the auger and the breaker and everything inside, so I don't need to really rebuild anything. I just need to connect my lines here, my water line, bolt it to the top of my gear box. These are my old pieces. I'm just trying to keep it all together because it's all getting sent back to the manufacturer. What I've done up here so far is I've unplugged the wire for the gearbox, drained out my water, disconnected that. I removed the insulation from here because this is where I'll be unwelding my lines for this guy and this guy. I'm going to end up using a tube cutter and just cutting right here, letting the R290 refrigerant vent out, and then I'm going to be welding on a new service port so that I can pull my vacuum and recharge. There's a filter dryer in here somewhere that's going to need to get replaced, and for some reason I'm not seeing it right now, but I know it's in here somewhere. I'll find it in just a second. The other thing that I've done, this is very important. This guy right here, this is the evaporator thermostat wire. It's behind this insulation. There's a little tube right there that it slips into. I had to pull this back and gently pull this out. If you bend that too many times, it will break, and then it'll lose a little bit of charge that's in there, and then the pressure switch up here, or the thermostat up here, won't work correctly. Let me get my tube cutter and cut this guy out. I really hope it doesn't explode or catch on fire or something. I don't think it will, but you never really know. So what I ended up doing is I ended up getting my snips, and I just pinched right here because I was terrified that it was just gonna blow off, and at least this way we can just let it vent and stand back. Try to maybe swing this door back and forth, get some airflow in here. Maybe I'm being overcautious, but like I said, better safe than sorry. Sounds like it's about to start slowing down, so maybe I can just take this off the rest of the way. There we go, just like that. Hopefully no kaboomies. Next thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna loosen up these bolts here that hold the gear motor and the gearbox to the base. And then I'm gonna get that to where I can slide it back and forth. And I'm gonna pull out my torches and I'm gonna heat these guys up just enough to where I can pull the cap tube out and I can pull this line out of the evaporator. The 4 little hex head bolts that hold this thing in place have been removed, so now I have free play. All I need to do is take these guys out. I've let this thing stay open for the last couple of minutes just to make sure that it has time to vent out all the pressure. Another fun thing that I'm 100% not looking forward to is this. So obviously we have to replace the filter dryer, but I have to put this in place of that, which totally sucks, especially since this is a 3/8 outlet and then it goes to this cap tube. So I have to figure out a way to make that work. Not looking forward to it. So I got it pulled out of there and that thing's lit up like a candle. It's really not all that scary, but I just warmed up this side with the flame. The cap tube right here slid right out of there, and then I did the second with the other line. Like I said, that's already been cut. I need to weld a service port onto there and replace this filter dryer. I should probably go ahead and get my port now, weld that on there so I can actually get some nitrogen into the system. There was not really any way for me to flow nitrogen. I guess I could have put the service port on there, flowed nitrogen, and just cut this guy out. But let me get that figured out right now so I can actually do it the right way. Welded my Schrader port onto here, connected my nitrogen bottle. I am flowing and I can feel a little bit coming out from this end. Now I'm gonna need to, I'll probably tackle that last because that's gonna be a super pain. I had taken everything out. Now I need to figure out how to get this all back in there. I didn't end up taking that to the van because I figured I would need these bolts, unless they're right here. No, I need to take the bolts that hold the evaporator to the gearbox off so that I can connect it onto here. Just pulled the evaporator off of the gearbox and I see that this is here, which hopefully will come off. Oh man, well that needs to go onto here because the new assembly doesn't come with one, and there has to be, you know, whatever that thing's called, the coupling to connect the gear motor to the shaft of the auger. So let me figure out how to get that off. I have my 4 bolts, so I can bolt this into place, but I can't do that until I put the coupling on. That would be a big mistake if I were to bolt the evaporator on there without putting the coupling on, and then I would be confused of why my ice machine wasn't working. Took a little bit of coercing, but I was able to get it off, and it only matches up one way. So one's a circle, one's a rectangle. I assume that just slides on there. And then as long as you have your orientation right, which these point this way so that they can match up with these copper lines. So I would assume it goes like that. We got to get the auger to fall in, and then you can kind of turn it to where your holes line up. And I'm fairly certain that that's the way it's going to go. That way the chute matches up with the chute, and then my 2 copper lines will match up with here. So I think we're good to move this up into place. Oh, actually, I take that back. I'm gonna put these 4 bolts in real quick, and then I'm gonna put it up into place. All set in place. I did install the switch. It's just a matter of screwing it into place. And I loosened this up as well as I removed the insulation so that I could turn this and have it match when I set this in place All of my screws are just finger tight. I'm gonna go ahead and tighten those up before I get to welding. I'll probably retighten this as well. Just get this all squared away. I'm still flowing nitrogen, but I'm going to just get this part finished. I believe my cap tube, thankfully, will just slide in there, and then it'll just be a matter of hitting it with a little bit of solder just to plug up this end, kind of where you can see the old weld at. Really don't want to blow a hole in this. I think I'm going to put a majority of my heat on this side, and then the heat will just transfer over, and then the copper will do the rest. And then after I get the cap tube one in there, you know what? I might actually do this one first. Probably do this one first, shove that in there, get that one done, and then do the cap tube. I'm not really sure. But either way, I'm gonna get this done, get these done, and then I'll move on to the fun part, which will be figuring out how to do this filter dryer. Pretty solid welds. It actually turned out to be a little bit easier than I thought it would be. This side, everything looks good. This is bolted in. I've got this tightened down. I'll worry about plugging this in and putting the insulation back on here. I did put the evaporator thermostat wire into its hole, nice and, carefully shoved it up inside of the little copper tube that's welded to the side of the evaporator. My gear box is bolted down. Still have nitrogen going into my system. Now I'm going to work on removing this. I think I will start by just unwelding it and getting this out of the way, and then figure out how to put my new filter dryer on there. I don't know if I will pinch one end of the filter dryer and then just shove the cap tube inside of it, or if I'll add a stem to it. I haven't really decided yet. This is the best I could come up with. I welded this side already, and now I have to try to get this cap tube into the other end of this filter dryer. So what I did was I cut me up a piece of copper, 1/4 inch copper. That's gonna go in just like that. And then my cap tube is gonna go in just like that. And I'm gonna weld them back like that. And hopefully it works. I'm not sure if this is the right way to do it. If there is a standard way out there to do it, let me know. This is the best I can come up with for right now. The fact that we swapped to this size filter dryer from, where's that little guy at? This little thing, it's kind of weird to me. That actually ended up being a little bit easier than I thought it would be. My welds are not the prettiest, but they are solid. I did inspect them all the way around. I'm probably gonna go ahead and pressurize the system with nitrogen, throw some soap bubbles on the end, see if I bubble up or not, and then get everything set up to run a vacuum on the system and get ready to recharge it all. Sure is a good thing I decided to leak check it, because that is not good, and I'm kind of disappointed in myself, because that's not just a small leak, that's bubbling all over the place. I gotta redo that weld and check it again. Not super proud of my welds and how they look, but I leak checked them twice. I had a leak the first time, and then when I went to redo this weld, this one decided it wanted to leak a second time. So I actually ended up pressurizing it, leak checking it, unpressurizing it, welding, and did that 2 or 3 times in a row before that got completed. And then I pressurized it, checked all my welds one last time, and everything looked really good. So now I'm gonna set up for pulling a vacuum, and I'm not exactly sure how I'm gonna do that just yet, but I'll get it set up, and when it's done, I'll show you what I came up with. There may be a better way of doing this, but this is what I've come up with. So this red hose connected to the system with this guy open. This one pulling off my vacuum, shut off valve here so that I can close it when I reach my 500 microns. Now at some point in time, I'm gonna have to swap to this guy, which is my R290 charging kit, the scale, and I'm gonna have to use this connector with this port. So my theory, or my kind of plan, is once I get to 500 microns, I can close this guy down, remove my micron gauge, connect my charging hose. Before I charge, I'll cut off the vacuum, just like that. And then I'll be able to use the little shut off valve, charge what I need, and then be able to cut this one off. That'll be cut off, and then should be good to go. The way I had it set up before really wasn't working all that well, so I swapped, got my regular hose, and then I put this guy on there. My plan is to use this shut off valve when the vacuum's done being pulled, close the valve, then connect my charging hose from the R290 directly onto here. And once everything's bled up to this point, I'll reopen that and then charge it with the refrigerant. Took long enough, but we are under 500 now. Vacuum's still running. I'm gonna cut that off in a second. Just wanna show you what I've done. I connected my bottle. I bled out to here at least. Now, when I get both my hands back, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna cut this closed, remove this guy, bleed through this end to this point, and then when I'm ready to charge, I'm gonna open this and then weigh my amount in, which is only like 5 ounces. So let me get that done, and then we'll fire up the machine and see if it works. I ended up rounding up from 5.22 to 5.3. Everything was liquid to this point before I cut it open. So I know that whatever's left inside these hoses isn't really part of that weight. That weight is strictly what's inside the machine. So I can cut this off right now, and I can take this all off. Even though there's gonna be some refrigerant left in the system, it's not critical that that gets sucked into the machine. Now all I need to do is focus on running the machine, get the little bit of charge out of this section of the hose, pinch this off, and weld this closed, which is sometimes pretty tricky to do. So just finished up. That's what this looks like. Yeah, I probably should have removed that weld, but I couldn't get to it. My pinch point was too close. I probably could have gotten to it, but nice solid weld. I'm gonna spray the tip of that with some soap bubbles as well. Make sure it's not leaking. Now it's time to reapply power in the panel, see if this thing starts dropping ice or not. We fire it up, and now we're running. The fan is turning on and off like it should. It's been about 3 minutes, and we have ice falling into the bin. Had a little bit of struggles here and there with pulling the vacuum. It wasn't really wanting to come down with the small R290 gauge set. So what I needed to do was put a little, whatever it is, 6-inch stubby refrigerant hose with a shutoff valve on, use my regular manifold gauge set, run my vacuum, and then close that off, switch over to my R290 gauges, and then charge up. I also had a little bit of issue with leaks. Usually the welds are pretty solid. I don't know what the issue was this go around. Luckily, I pressurized it and checked with soap bubbles to make sure that I didn't have a leak, and then I did. So I had to depressurize, re-weld. Then I pressurized a second time, had another leak, did it all over again, finally didn't have any leaks. Luckily, I ran my vacuum for 45 minutes while I, took off and went and had lunch at Habit Burger, which was pretty awesome. Other than that, it went pretty smooth. It was just a lot of work. Took me probably 5-6 hours to do the entire process. If I had done it before, I probably could have been faster, but it's my first time doing that particular job. And then I think I already said it, but R290 is few and far in between for us right now. I know it's going to become more common, but as of right now, we're doing it maybe once every 3 or 4 months. That's up from once a year, which is telling for what's to come. There's a free group chat on Patreon under Ice Machine 411. It's the best way to contact me. Ask any questions you want about Ice Machine service. I also post just some photos of different crazy things that I see outside. We'll see you on the next one.